Man, we talk a lot about heroism in the military, and rightfully so. These are people who sign up for something bigger than themselves, who put their lives on the line in situations most of us can't even imagine. It's an insane amount of pressure, a level of stress that's almost incomprehensible. You're in a foreign land, you don't speak the language, every shadow could be a threat. Training strips you down, rebuilds you to survive in chaos. But what happens when the fear, the fog of war, overwhelms training and morality? Structure that creates order can birth profound chaos. Today we're going into that gray area, 5 incidents where the rules of engagement, the laws of war, basic human decency, were thrown out the window. So let's get into it. To understand the complexities of military conduct, we must confront its darkest moments. We begin with a heavy one, My Lai, March 16, 1968. The Vietnam War was at a fever pitch. The Tet Offensive had recently shocked American forces, leaving a climate of fear, anger and a thirst for retribution. It was in this charged atmosphere that an event unfolded which would irrevocably stain the reputation of the U.S. military and change how the world viewed the war. The unit was Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment, part of a larger ad hoc unit named Task Force Barker. They had suffered recent casualties from mines and booby traps and were told the area they were entering, which they called Pinkville, was a hornet's nest. They were ordered to conduct a search and destroy mission in the hamlet of My Son, near the village of My Lai. The intelligence briefing they received was specific. The area was a stronghold for the 48th Viet Cong Battalion. Crucially, they were told that all innocent civilians would have left for the local market by 7 a.m., and anyone remaining was either a Viet Cong sympathizer or an active enemy combatant. That intelligence was catastrophically, tragically wrong. They landed expecting a fierce firefight, but as the helicopters departed, an eerie silence fell over the hamlet. There was no enemy fire, no resistance, no sign of the Viet Cong battalion they had been sent to destroy. What they found were villagers just beginning their day, old men, women, children, and babies, cooking breakfast and tending to their chores. They were unarmed, confused, and terrified. Under ambiguous orders to waste the enemy and direct orders from officers on the ground, most notoriously, Lieutenant William Calley, the soldiers began rounding up the villagers. The mission's objective seemed to shift from finding an enemy to eliminating everyone present. This wasn't a battle, it became a systematic execution. Over the next few hours, a wave of violence swept through the hamlet. People were herded into ditches and huts, then gunned down with automatic weapons. Homes were burned, and livestock were killed. The final death toll remains uncertain, but estimates range from 347 to over 504 unarmed Vietnamese civilians. In a matter of hours, an entire community was virtually annihilated. The only meaningful resistance came not from the ground, but from the air. Warrant Officer Hugh Thompson, a helicopter pilot on a reconnaissance mission, was horrified by what he saw. He landed his aircraft between the advancing American troops and a group of terrified villagers. He ordered his crew to train their guns on the soldiers, threatening to fire if they harmed the civilians. Thompson and his crew, Glenn Andriotta and Lawrence Colburn, airlifted a handful of survivors to safety, directly defying the orders of their countrymen on the ground. In the immediate aftermath, the Army's official report was a complete fabrication. It claimed a major victory, stating that 128 enemy combatants had been killed. For over a year, the massacre was successfully covered up. The truth only emerged thanks to the conscience of a few individuals. Ron Riddenhauer, a soldier who heard accounts of the massacre from members of Charlie Company, wrote letters to Congress. His persistence eventually caught the attention of investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, who broke the story. The world then saw the horrific photos taken by Army photographer Ronald Haberle, and the official narrative collapsed. 26 soldiers were charged, but only Lieutenant William Calley was convicted. He was found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison. However, his sentence was repeatedly reduced, and after presidential intervention, he ultimately served about 3.5 years under house arrest. For the survivors, the trauma was permanent. For the American public, it became a deep wound on the national psyche. A brutal wake-up call about the darkness that can fester within the fog of war, and a permanent symbol of the devastating consequences when discipline, leadership, and humanity fail. The Iraq War, 2003. In the age of digital cameras and the internet, the dark corners of conflict were about to be exposed in a way the world had never seen. This time, we all saw it in near real time. The scandal that would unfold at Abu Ghraib prison would become one of the most defining and damaging episodes of the entire war. The prison itself was already infamous, a symbol of brutality under Saddam Hussein's regime. The irony was devastating when it became the site of new abuses, this time under American watch. In late 2003, members of the 372nd Military Police Company, tasked with guarding the facility, began documenting their own misconduct. They took pictures. The resulting images were shocking. Prisoners stripped naked and forced into pyramids, hooded and attached to electrical wires, threatened with dogs, and subjected to profound sexual humiliation. The photos weren't just evidence, they were trophies. The story broke when a whistleblower specialist, Joseph Darby, anonymously passed a CD of the images to Army investigators. In April 2004, the program 60 Minutes 2 aired the story, and the New Yorker magazine published the photos and a detailed report. There was no denying the evidence. The images instantly defined the American occupation for much of the world, sparking global outrage. The official response from the Bush administration was that these were the isolated acts of a few bad apples. But as investigations began, that narrative quickly frayed. Questions arose about the chain of command and the policies that might have created the environment for such abuse to flourish. The debate turned to interrogation directives approved at the highest levels, including by Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, which authorized enhanced techniques. An internal Army report by Major General Antonio Taguba found systemic and illegal abuse, concluding that the soldiers' actions were the result of severe leadership failures. The central question remained, how high did responsibility go? In the end, 11 soldiers were convicted in courts-martial. Sentences range from dishonorable discharges to 10 years in prison for the ringleader, Charles Grainer. But to critics, this was insufficient. No high-ranking officers or civilian officials were ever charged, leading to accusations that the enlisted soldiers were scapegoats for policies set at the top. The damage to America's moral standing was catastrophic. Insurgent groups immediately used the photos as a powerful recruiting tool, fueling the anti-American insurgency. The scandal severely undercut the hearts and minds mission and became a permanent, haunting stain on the legacy of the war. Abu Ghraib became a ghost, a symbol of a moment when a nation's actions failed to live up to its ideals. November 19, 2005. The city of Haditha, in Iraq's volatile Al-Anbar province, was a nerve center for the Sunni insurgency. For the Marines of Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, every patrol was a high-stakes gamble on streets laced with hidden explosives. The constant threat of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, created an atmosphere of extreme tension where the line between civilian and combatant could blur in an instant. That morning, the gamble was lost. A massive roadside bomb detonated under a Humvee, engulfing the convoy in smoke and chaos. The blast instantly killed Lance Corporal Miguel Terrazas and severely wounded 2 other Marines. In the disorienting aftermath, training took over, but so did something more primal. The squad, led by Staff Sergeant Frank Wuderick, began clearing nearby houses, believing the triggerman was close. The initial Marine press release was brief. Terrazas and 15 Iraqi civilians were killed by the bomb in a subsequent firefight with insurgents. It was a tragic but seemingly routine story in the fog of war, but that official narrative quickly began to crumble. A young Iraqi journalism student, Taher Thabet, arrived on the scene and began filming, capturing video that starkly contradicted the story of a firefight. His footage, obtained by Time magazine, showed a different kind of horror. Inside the homes, there were no signs of an intense gun battle, no bullet-pocked walls from insurgent fire. Instead, the camera revealed bodies of women and children, many still in their nightclothes, killed by close-range gunfire and grenade shrapnel inside their own bedrooms. Time's subsequent investigation uncovered harrowing testimony from survivors. They described Marines kicking in doors, throwing grenades into rooms, and then opening fire. Other witnesses recounted how a taxi carrying unarmed men was stopped, and its passengers were ordered out and shot dead on the street. The final death toll was staggering: 24 unarmed Iraqi civilians, including women, an elderly man in a wheelchair, and 7 children. But one as young as 1 year old. The revelation sparked global outrage and a massive criminal investigation. 8 Marines were ultimately charged with crimes ranging from murder to dereliction of duty and making false statements. But the path to justice proved complex and fraught. Over 6 years of legal proceedings, the prosecution's cases unraveled. Charges against 6 of the Marines were dropped. A 7th was acquitted. Finally, only Staff Sergeant Vuderich, the squad leader, remained. He struck a plea deal, admitting to 1 count of negligent dereliction of duty. His rank was reduced to private. He served no jail time. For the families of the victims and for many observers around the world, the outcome was a profound shock. A legal conclusion that offered no convictions for the 24 deaths, leaving a painful and unanswered question: where was justice for Haditha? By 2012, Afghanistan was a decade-old war. Trust was fragile. Robert Bales' 4th combat tour, the psychological toll unimaginable. On March 11, 2012, he walked off his outpost alone at night. He entered homes in Al-Qazai, killing 4, wounding 6, then returned unseen. He left again, went to Najiban, and did the same, methodical, chilling. In total, 16 civilians murdered, 9 were children, some bodies were burned, protests erupted, insurgents exploited the atrocity. Years of counterinsurgency undone overnight. Defense cited PTSD, TBI, stress, alcohol, steroids. Prosecution argued calculated, deliberate murder. Bales pled guilty to avoid death, sentenced to life without parole at Fort Leavenworth. The case forced a reckoning with a brewing mental health crisis in the ranks. It showed how a single night could shatter hearts and minds built over years. Korea, 1950, weeks into war. Chaos everywhere. Hundreds of South Korean refugees fled toward American positions. At a bridge near No Gun Ri, U.S. soldiers of the 7th Cavalry stopped and searched them, forced them into the tunnel. Survivors say aircraft strafed them. Soldiers on high ground then opened fire. For 3 days anyone who tried to escape was shot, trapped in a kill box. Harrowing accounts, hiding under bodies, endless gunfire, hundreds killed. After decades of denial, a 1999 AP investigation confirmed the story with veteran testimonies. The Army acknowledged many civilians killed, called it tragic, not deliberate, said no orders found. Survivors and reporters disputed that. No Gun Ri remains a complex legacy: brutality, memory, and the long fight for truth. Looking back, My Lai, Abu Ghraib, Haditha, Kandahar, No Gun Ri, different wars, decades, continents, there's a dark thread that connects them. We train young people to be lethal and place them under unimaginable stress. Some break, and lines dissolve. Each incident sparked outrage and inquiries, often with unsatisfying results. This isn't anti-military. It's respect for the uniform to demand the highest conduct. For everyone who crosses the line, thousands hold it under pressure. The hero and the monster can wear the same uniform. It's on us to never forget.